Welcome back to Writing in Science, or Week 4. This week we'll focus on the question, how can we set goals that take students beyond their existing language abilities? Take a moment to think about the diversity of language abilities in your classroom. In my most diverse classroom, I had at least 6 different languages represented. Just think about the power present in that room. It's the kind of asset that's going to be a great advantage in an increasingly global world. It's a wonderful opportunity to develop multicultural understanding. But just as there might be a diversity of home languages spoken in your classroom, you probably also see a really wide variety of abilities with the English language. Many teachers have students at the entering level who are just beginning their path towards bilingualism, sitting right next to students who are native English speakers, and next to them, students at the bridging or expanding level. Take a moment to think about the learning objectives that we set for that diverse group of learners. Can you picture them on the board of your room or at the top of the lesson plan? If you'd walked into my room, you'd probably have seen 2 objectives on the board. 1 content learning objective and 1 language objective. That's right, with all that linguistic diversity, I probably still just had 1 language objective up on the board. Why? Well, writing a single language objective for all the learners in the class can be useful if it's part of a larger picture or a larger process that includes thinking about the language demands of the science and identifying an area of focus and a language mode, such as speaking or writing. Planning supports for students to reach the language objectives was an equally important part of that thinking process. So once again, that basic practice of writing a language objective, it's great. But once again, if we're really going to move students forward, we've got to have times where we go beyond that basic. Let me just suggest that the writing revising process at this stage is the perfect time to go beyond a single classroom goal. Once students have completed a rough draft through your pre-writing exercises, this is the time when we can take a close look at their language and set an appropriate individualized goal. Just like the general classroom goals, this goal setting still involves thinking about the language demands of the science, identifying a specific area of focus or language mode, and providing support. But to take it further, we're going to try to make these goals individualized, collaborative between the teacher or group of teachers or teacher and student, and assessment-based. This is tough work. This is also where our students stand to gain the most. Fortunately, some of the work has been done for us. Those of you familiar with the WIDA standards, adopted in Colorado as the State English Language Development Standards, know that we already have a really good description of what students can do, and our goals start there. If you aren't familiar with the WIDA standards, you'll have an opportunity to explore them further during this week's Explore and Make It Work. Well, let's say I want to set a goal for one of my bilingual students, let's say a 6th grade student named Eduardo. I can look at his test results, or I can use personal observation and get an idea that Eduardo's a WIDA level 2, an emerging bilingual. What should I expect from him? I can start by getting a copy of the simplest WIDA resource, the Can-Do descriptors, in this case for the 6th through 8th grade. From this document, the Can-Do descriptors, I see that emerging bilinguals in the writing mode should be able to complete pattern sentences, extend sentence starters with original ideas, connect simple sentences, and complete graphic organizers. Now, I'll look at the student's work. I see Eduardo used a graphic organizer in the pre-writing that he did and wrote a set of simple sentences. I'm thinking, great. Are we done? Our initial assessment might be done, but here is the key information that we need to know and incorporate into our practice. Our job is to move students from language that is easy, from the language that they can do independently, to the next level. I like to call this Can-Do +1. It's what students will do with goals and assistance. And this idea isn't mine. The demand that we create individualized targets, it's straight from the WIDA standards and the Colorado standards. It's also backed up by research. synthesis of studies across the country points to the importance of clear and challenging goals that lie within the student's developmental level. How do you decide on a goal? Well, finding ways to do this efficiently is key, and going back to the WIDA standards and looking at the next level up from the student's current level of production can sometimes be the easiest step. A student at level 2 or emerging bilingual, you might see them producing simple sentences, and the next step up for that student might be in the next column of level 3 bilinguals, which is to link those sentences together. I might also just ask myself, what is the one language feature that will help the student better communicate the science? For example, if I see simple sentences like the weight gets bigger, the time numbers stay the same, to describe the relationship between two variables, weight and acceleration, I might choose to introduce a sentence structure or academic vocabulary. I could decide to introduce increase, decrease, remains the same. Or I could choose to introduce the linking sentence such as the weight gets bigger, the time it takes stays the same. I should be patient and not overwhelm the student with goal setting, recognizing that building academic language cannot be done in a single activity. So, this week, explore and plan for how to look at student work with individualized learning goals in mind. This may not be different from your current formative assessment practices in science. Assess the student work, looking for strengths and next steps. This is key to making goals individualized and assessment-based. To make a goal collaborative, we need opportunities to discuss the work with other teachers or with language specialists to see if the language goals can be supported in all areas. We can also discuss the goals with the students, communicating the goals before opportunities to revise. We'll talk more next week about how to provide efficient feedback to students in the revision process in your classroom. But until then, I hope you continue to expand your use of goal setting to make your classroom a place of bilingual excellence.